Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Is Brooke surprised by a covert blind date? It appeared to be a typical morning in the Logan home. While enjoying her expertly prepared coffee, Brooke Logan was unaware of what was going on in the background. Ever the optimist and romantic at heart, Hope Logan had decided to act as a matchmaker. Hope reflected that Brooke had been unmarried for too long. Her mother deserved a new beginning and a shot at happiness after everything she had gone through, including heartbreak and betrayal. Hope would just have to take the initiative for Brooke if she wasn't going to do it herself. With the accuracy of a robbery, the plan was put into action. Hope had gotten in touch with a friend from college who now operated a premium dating agency. After thoroughly screening the applicants, she had selected one, Ethan Carrington, an attractive, prosperous, and strangely unmarried man. Steady, gentle, and disconnected from the never-ending drama that seemed to afflict the Forrester and Spencer families, Ethan was just what Brooke needed. Knowing full well that the only way to guarantee the success of her plan was to keep it secret, Hope kept it a secret from everyone, including her husband Liam. Brooke was known for her stubbornness, and she would put an end to it as soon as she learned what Hope was up to. With a lot of activity, the day arrived. Hope knew that Brooke would never refuse a chance to help a worthy cause, so she made up a story about a charity luncheon at a fancy downtown cafe. She knew something was wrong the moment Brooke showed up, all up in a delicate pink sheath dress and matching heels. Instead of the typical charity crowd, the restaurant had a warm, welcoming atmosphere. Fresh roses were placed on the tables, and a gentle jazz tune played in the background. With her heels clicking on the smooth wooden floor, Brooke's brow wrinkled as she looked around the room. "What is this, I hope?" Brooke inquired in a dubious tone. Hope grinned naively, her eyes gleaming with mischievous intentness. "Mom, it's just a small surprise. You'll love it, I promise." Before Brooke could ask any more questions, a waiter showed up and led her to a table by the window. Ethan was sitting there smiling warmly. Brooke froze, trying to piece together what was going on in her head. Ethan got up to welcome her and remarked, "You must be Brooke." His manner was disarming, and his voice was rich and welcoming. "My name is Ethan. I'm glad to have met you." Brooke realized, and she glanced at Hope, who was opportunistically backing away toward the door. I hope her daughter had already left when Brooke phoned after her, so her mother had to go on the blind date by herself. With a look of humiliation and annoyance on her face, Brooke turned back to Ethan. Brooke sat down and smoothed her clothing before saying, "I'm so sorry about this. My daughter frequently meddles." Ethan laughed, instantly calming Brooke with his laid-back demeanor. "There's no need to say sorry. To be honest, I'm happy she did. I don't get to see someone as stunning and successful as you very often." For the first time in years, Brooke's cheeks began to blush. Even though she was annoyed at first, Ethan's appeal was evident. The uneasiness soon gave way to a sincere connection as the two got into a chat. Ethan talked about his experiences working as an architect, his love of travel, and his enthusiasm for sustainable design. In response, Brooke talked candidly about her love of horses, her kids, and her experiences in the fashion world. As the meal went on, Brooke started to laugh, really laugh, for the first time in a long time. She recognized that she had been lacking in her prior relationships since Ethan had a way of making her feel seen and valued. She briefly lost sight of the drama and difficulties in her life. She was merely a woman enjoying the company of an intriguing man. She was not Brooke Logan, the matriarch who was always involved in family conflicts. Hope, meanwhile, waited tensely at home with her phone nearby. Although she was aware that she had taken a chance, she also believed that her mother should be happy. Hope's nervousness turned to exhilaration as the hours went by without a phone or text. As she paced the living room, she reassured herself, perhaps it's going well. When dessert got back at the restaurant, the atmosphere changed a little. With a solemn gaze, Ethan leaned forward. "I must admit that I was a little anxious about today, Brooke. I'm not really into blind dates. However, I'm happy I came. You're amazing. Even though Brooke's heart was racing, she remained calm. "That is really considerate of you, Ethan. I should be honest, though. What I live is complex. More intricate than you may think." With a steady stare, Ethan nodded. "Everyone's life is untidy, Brooke. The issue is whether we choose to accept the chaos or allow it to limit us." His response strongly resonated with Brooke because it was straightforward and truthful. She had allowed fear and prior setbacks to control her decisions for years. Perhaps it was time to take a chance and let go of that baggage. Brooke had a lightness she hadn't experienced in years by the end of the date. As Ethan led her to her vehicle, the conversation flowed naturally. He reached for her hand as they said their goodbyes, his touch comforting and warm. "Brooke, I want to see you again. If you're willing." After a brief moment of hesitation, Brooke nodded. "That would be nice, Ethan. I would, in fact." Brooke's mind was racing with a mix of shock and astonishment as she drove home. Despite how frustrating it had been, Hope's interference might have produced something amazing. Brooke let herself feel optimistic about the future for the first time in a long time. Hope was waiting for her when she entered, her face displaying a mixture of anticipation and remorse. "All right," with hesitation, she inquired. Brooke crossed her arms, put her purse down, and gave her daughter a sarcastic, mocking look. "Never ambush me like that again," she added in a strong yet light-hearted tone. Hope's expression dimmed a little. "I apologize, Mom. I simply had the thought." "But it wasn't the worst idea you've ever had," Brooke said, interrupting with a smile. Hope's eyes got bigger. "Really? You liked him, then?" Brooke grinned as she nodded. "I did. And I may run into him again." Hope threw her arms around her mother and squealed with joy. "I was aware of it. I knew you would get along." Brooke was overcome with emotion as she gave her daughter a hug. She didn't even realize she needed the push that Hope's love and faith in her had given her. Brooke felt for the first time in a long time that the best parts of her story were yet to come. "Can you keep your secret?" Like an electric charge, the undercurrent of concealment ran through the glistening corridors of Forrester Creations, creating tension with each hushed exchange and covert glance. Brooke Logan, a lady whose legacy was based on both scandal and success, was at the center of it all. She had a strategy this time, one that was so delicately balanced that it could collapse into anarchy at the slightest disturbance. However, the borders of Brooke's web had been discovered by Zend Forrester, the gifted young designer with an eye for detail and a heart caught in the crossfire. There was a lingering question: would he reveal her plot or become caught up in it himself? It began harmlessly enough. In the tranquil silence of the design studio, Zend had been sketching through the night when he heard Brooke's voice coming from an adjacent office. Low and urgent, her voice carried a hint of desperation that demanded attention. Even if he couldn't hear every word, the bits he did hear were enough to make his head spin. Phrases like leverage, damage control, and keep Ridge in line gave the impression that the situation was anything from benign. Everyone who knew Brooke was aware of her schemes, but this one felt more deliberate and risky. Zend was unable to get rid of the uneasiness that had descended upon him the following morning. He mentally reenacted the exchange, questioning whether he had misheard or misinterpreted what he had heard. However, as the day went on, hints started to emerge. Brooke's interactions with Ridge were remarkably tense, her laughter was forced, and her smiles were fragile. She appeared to be spending too much time with Ridge's son, Thomas, and Hope, her daughter, at the same time. Brooke's involvement was like a lit match floating perilously close to the long-standing explosive keg of tension between those two. His designer's instincts began to recognize connections and discrepancies, drawing Zend farther into the enigma. He saw how Brooke positioned herself as the glue that held the Forrester family together while quietly undermining individuals she perceived as threats, and how her seemingly casual discussions were laced with subtle allusions to loyalty and trust. Brooke was playing to win, and it was similar to witnessing a chess match. What was her ultimate goal, though? The solution was a misplaced document that had been haphazardly placed on a table in the conference room at Forrester. Zend instantly recognized Brooke's handwriting. The notes described a plan to influence Hope to support Thomas in a future custody dispute over Douglas. Protecting her daughter at all costs, even if it meant severing the family, was a classic Brooke act. However, the ramifications were astounding. In addition to destroying Thomas, this plot could permanently sever Ridge and Brooke's relationship. Did she just not care, or did she fail to recognize the possible consequences? Zend was at a crossroads as he struggled with his discoveries. Should he face Brooke head-on, risking her anger and the delicate equilibrium of family relationships? Or should he tell Ridge about it, knowing that it can blow out in unexpected ways? As the decision weighed heavily on him, he turned to Paris Buckingham, the one person he had complete faith in. Zend explained what he had discovered, and Paris listened carefully. With every discovery, her eyes became wide, but she didn't stop. She whistled softly when he was finally done. "Even for this family, that's some serious drama," she remarked. "However, Zend, you're placing yourself in a difficult situation. It can backfire if you reveal Brooke. Nothing sticks to her like Teflon. However, you are complicit in any fallout if you remain silent." Zend ran a hand through his hair and muttered, "I know. However, I can't ignore this. Paris, Brooke is tampering with people's lives. Everyone will suffer, even Hope and Douglas, if this proceeds in the wrong direction." Paris gave a contemplative nod. "Perhaps there is a method to deal with this without using nuclear power. What happens if you speak with Thomas? He should be aware of the schemes being hatched against him." It was a good idea, but it was risky. To put it mildly, Thomas had a convoluted past, and his responses were not always predictable. Zend knew Paris was correct, though. Thomas was the only person who should have known of Brooke's scheme. Zend discovered him later that day going over ideas for a forthcoming collection in the Forrester Design Lab. Zend shut the door behind him and said, "Thomas, we need to talk." With a cautious yet inquisitive face, Thomas raised his head. "It has to do with Brooke. You are the target of anything she is plotting." Thomas's eyes narrowed and his forehead furrowed. "What are you discussing?" After a moment of hesitation, Zend gave Thomas the document he had discovered. Thomas's jaw tensed as he read, and a glimmer of rage appeared on his face. He said, "I knew she'd never stop meddling. However, this? Is she prepared to harm me by using Douglas as a pawn?" Zend remarked, "I don't think it's just about hurting you. She believes she is defending Hope. She is, however, going too far." With his hands balled into fists, Thomas put the paper down. "I appreciate you telling me, Zend. I'll take care of this." However, managing it proved more difficult than expected. Tensions at Forrester Creations increased over the course of the following few days as Thomas started to quietly resist Brooke's influence. He made sure their relationship was apparent to everyone, especially Hope, by spending more time with Douglas. Zend, meanwhile, observed from the sidelines as his nervousness increased. Had he acted appropriately, or had he merely added fuel to a fire that was already burning fiercely? A family gathering at Eric Forrester's estate was the tipping point. Sensing she was losing control, Brooke passionately spoke about unity and the value of acting in Douglas' best interests. Thomas, however, would have none of it. "What's best for Douglas is not being manipulated by people with their own agendas," he stated in a calm but icy voice. Anger flared in Brooke's eyes, but she immediately covered it up. "Thomas, I'm not sure what you're saying, but my family is the reason behind everything I do." "Is that correct?" Thomas retorted, removing the paper Zend had handed him. "Because it doesn't seem like a family issue. It appears to be a control issue." As everyone read the incriminating notes, there were gasps throughout the room. Ridge's face was a mix of sadness and incredulity as he turned to face Brooke. "Is this accurate?" His voice was hardly audible above a whisper when he inquired. Brooke opened her mouth, but nothing came out. As the room fell into disarray, alliances broke down and accusations flew. Paris glanced across the room at Zend in the middle of everything. She acknowledged that he had done what he thought was right with a modest, comforting nod. One thing became evident as the consequences of the revelation developed: once the truth was known, it has a force of its own. The Forrester family was left to pick up the pieces after Brooke's plan fell apart. However, it was unclear if the harm could ever be fully rectified. Additionally, the event served as a sobering reminder to Zend that secrets, no matter how meticulously maintained, always have a price. In the role of collateral damage, Brooke embarrasses herself. In the realm of Forrester creations, where ambition and elegance met in a never-ending dance of power and desire, the day began like any other. However, this day would be a turning point for reinvention queen Brooke Logan, and not in the way she had anticipated. Brooke had always been a natural force that flourished in the middle of chaos and a spark for drama. This time, however, her actions would be viewed as a huge failure rather than a victory, ruining her connections and reputation. An ill-advised business meeting started the conflict. Brooke had been pushing for a daring new campaign that mainly relied on controversial topics and provocative images in an effort to reinvigorate the Forrester brand. Although her vision was bold, there were serious hazards involved. Her spouse and artistic collaborator, Ridge Forrester, had been hesitant and had advised prudence. "Brooke, this might backfire," he said in a worried tone. Still unyielding, Brooke dismissed his protests. With her eyes burning with resolve, she retorted, "There are times when you have to take chances to stay ahead." Tensions among the Forrester family increased as the campaign progressed. The gaps were only widened by Brooke's choice to make Hope the brand's spokesperson rather than Ridge's children Steffi and Thomas. During a heated argument, Steffi charged, "This isn't just a business move. You're playing favorites, and it's obvious." Brooke brushed off the criticism, ignoring the mounting dissatisfaction in her immediate vicinity. The campaign's well-publicized launch party was the turning point. Prominent members of the media and industry attended the lavish and glamorous event. Wearing a gorgeous gold gown that glistened in the spotlight, Brooke reveled in her accomplishment. However, as the evening wore on, rumors started to spread. A number of purportedly stolen emails that came from Brooke's account have made their way online. The ads painted Steffi and Thomas as brand liabilities and included derogatory remarks about them. The consequences were imminent, and the timing couldn't have been worse. In front of the gathered guests, Ridge faced Brooke, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. "How were you able to?" With a voice that broke through the crowd's murmur, he demanded. "Brooke, they are my kids. Our family." At first, Brooke reacted with shock and denial. Her voice trembled as she claimed, "I didn't write those emails. My account must have been hacked, but the damage was already done." No amount of complaints could reverse the established perception of Brooke as a cunning manipulator. Brooke became more and more alone as the scandal developed. Her greatest supporter, Hope, found it difficult to balance her ethical principles with her mother's allegiance. Hope replied, "Mom, I want to believe you," after a heated discussion at the Logan estate. However, this doesn't appear to be good. "You must own up to your mistakes." Brooke's annoyance reached a boiling point. With angry flashes in her eyes, she yelled, "I'm being set up. Why is that invisible to everyone?" Steffi and Thomas, meanwhile, took advantage of the chance to solidify their roles at Forrester Creations. They mobilized Eric and Ridge's support by portraying Brooke's demise as an opportunity to restore the family business's integrity. In a private discussion with Thomas, Steffi said, "This is our opportunity to recover what is rightfully ours. The harm caused by Brooke's influence is sufficient." In an attempt to clear her record, Brooke went to Bill Spencer, an odd ally. The media tycoon, who was notorious for his brutal methods, had his own motivations for wanting Brooke to be cleared. When she asked him for assistance, he said frankly, "My investment in Forrester goes down if you go down, Brooke." They began looking into the origin of the leaked emails together, and they found a trail that led to a former employee who was upset and had connections to Quinn Fuller. Though it came at a high cost, the revelation provided a ray of optimism. Ridge saw their collaboration as a betrayal, and Brooke's relationship with Bill rekindled past conflicts with him in her pursuit of the truth. "Are you going to him?" During another furious fight, Ridge spat. "After all the harm he has caused to this family," Brooke tried to explain, but her voice broke. "Ridge, I had no other option. Nobody else would assist me. A dramatic showdown at Forrester Creations marked the conclusion of the inquiry. Armed with proof of her innocence, Brooke confronted Quinn in front of the whole family. Despite her inward agony, Brooke's voice remained firm as she said, "You planned this." Quinn's reaction was a poisonous smirk. "You wanted to ruin me, and you almost succeeded. Brooke, you accomplished that by yourself. I just pushed you a little." Brooke was somewhat vindicated by the truth, but there was no denying the wounds caused by the experience. Despite being glad that Brooke hadn't abandoned his kids, Ridge was unable to overlook the more serious rifts in their relationship. He remarked solemnly, "We keep doing this, at the Forrester mansion. Tear each other apart, hurt each other." Brooke's eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't protest. "Perhaps it's time we acknowledge that love is insufficient." She questioned whether Ridge was correct for the first time. Brooke stayed out of the spotlight in the days that followed, preferring to concentrate on starting over and mending her connections. Even though her acts weren't deliberate, she acknowledged the hurt they had caused and apologized to Steffi and Thomas. She acknowledged, "I've made mistakes," at a family gathering. "But I'm determined to put things right." Despite the lengthy and difficult path to atonement, Brooke met it with the fortitude that had always characterized her. Even though her shame had scarred her, it also acted as a spur to improvement, making her face her shortcomings and aim higher. Ultimately, Brooke's journey was about recovering the inner fortitude to rise above the rubble and rebuild, not only about regaining her position in the Forrester dynasty. And she brought with her the hard-won knowledge that, despite shame, there was always hope for redemption as she made those first hesitant moves in the direction of a better future.